Hey, this is Teresa Matsura, author of the Book of Japanese Folklore and, coming this fall, 2025, the Yokai Oracle deck, which you can pre-order if you'd like. I'm here to share with you all those hidden, fascinating, and sometimes frightening corners of old Japan. Come with me as I explore strange superstitions, creepy creatures, and cultural curiosities right here on Uncanny Japan. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, mind racing, with the sudden and urgent thought, I wonder who the first samurai was? And then a couple hours later, still no signs of sleep. Things have escalated to, I wonder if severed heads can fly. Wow, isn't that a coincidence? That's exactly what I want to talk to you about today. Today I'm going to tell you about the fierce, the legendary, the wild Taira no Masakado, who has been dubbed the first samurai. Was he a bad guy? Was he a good guy? And yeah, we'll get into airborne heads too, and curses. You know how Japan loves three great things, like Sandai, three great ghosts, episode 157. And we've talked about all three of them here. There's Oiwa in the story Yotsuya Kaidan, episode 42. Okiku in the story Bancho Sarayashiki, episode 25. And Otsuyu in Botandoro, the Peony Lantern, episode 158. But there's also Sandai Leizan, three great sacred mountains, and Sandai Keikan, three great scenic views. There's even Sandai Hikyo Eki, three great remote train stations. There are a lot. And in there's Sandai Onyo, three great grudge-holding spirits. If you thought it was a little unfair that the three great ghosts were all women, well, the three great Onyo, or vengeful spirits, are all men. And one of those angry ghosties is Taira no Masakado. Taira no Masakado, often called the first samurai, lived all the way back in the early 900s. He was a descendant of Emperor Kanmu. His grandfather, Prince Takamochi, was in fact the great-grandson of that emperor. However, to mitigate the constantly growing imperial family, people marrying people, having lots of babies, things like that, who all needed to be taken care of, by the way, and could presumably start influencing politics, the emperor would occasionally demote, so to speak, family members, and that's exactly what he did to Prince Takamochi. Instead of being a direct descendant of the gods, he gave him the name Taira and put him in charge of that clan. Now, just keep that little bit of information in mind. So Taira no Masakado was born around what is now Ibaraki and Chiba prefectures. He grew up and he served in the imperial Heian court in Kyoto for a while, trying to secure a certain position, but it turns out he couldn't, so he returned home, near Tokyo. Everything was fine until it wasn't. There are a couple versions of what went down. There's the ubiquitous, it all happened over a woman. But the one I read about most is that his father died and it was inheritance time. Suddenly, all of Masakado's uncles, alongside some men from the Minamoto tribe, began snatching up the land that was rightfully his. That wasn't bad enough. When he fought back, they tried to ambush him. Little did they know what an awesome fighter Masakado really was. Not only did Taira Masakado defeat these ingrates, he set fire to their land and killed thousands. This, of course, landed him in court, but it was found that he did nothing wrong. He was allowed to go free. But his troubles didn't end there. Next, his father-in-law and relatives on that side of the family attacked too, all after those huge tracts of land. Masakado went through the proper channels, but things got a little out of hand, and he went scorched earth. In the end, he ended up conquering 8 entire provinces. I know what you're thinking. What an asshole. But hear me out. Those relatives stole from him first. And what's an even better measure of character? These areas he took over? Well, the peasants and lower-class citizens had been horribly abused and taken advantage of by the richer, more powerful landowners and local politicians for so long that when Taira no Masakado sweeps in and is like fair to them, he treats them like humans, gives them money and everything, they totally take his side. They adore him and his little army. He's their hero. Some stories say that he got a little full of himself and proclaimed that he was the new emperor of the Kanto region, and he even set up his own court and bureaucracy. Because, theoretically, he did have royal blood. Other tales suggest it was the imperial court back in Kyoto that heard about how powerful and, gasp, likable he was. And they feared that that's exactly what he might do. So they called him an outlaw and a rebel, and they started this rumor. They also put a bounty on his head. Sadly, 59 days after that announcement, that bounty, his cousin, Taira no Sadamori, and a man named Fujiwara no Masakado took it upon themselves to attack Taira no Masakado in the Battle of Kojima and kill him. He was only 37 years old. Now here's where the story gets even more interesting. As was done at the time, proof that they'd murdered their intended target and to get the money, Fujiwara and Sadamori cut off his head and carried it back to Kyoto, where the emperor ordered it to be put on display in the eastern marketplace as a grisly warning to anyone else who might get some bright idea about leading an uprising. What's worse is that the emperor expressly forbade anyone to give Masakado's remains a proper Buddhist funeral or memorial service. No prayers were offered. This might be what garnered him the Vengeful Spirit title. We know how important it is to have a person's soul put to rest. By denying this ceremony, the emperor condemned this heroic first samurai's spirit to wander this earthly realm for, well, forever. And it is, still to this day. But I'll get to that in a minute. There was something strange going on, though. Masakado's decapitated head didn't decompose. I mean, it looked wretched. Long, greasy, tangled hair, dirty face, ferocious scowl, blood and gunk and gore. But it survived a trip across Japan and then for 3 months, sitting out in the sun, outside a market with a sign stating his crimes beneath it. People walking by and gawking. And the whole time it looked, for lack of a better word, fresh. Its eyes remained open and glaring, at times rolling around in their sockets. Some say it moaned and spontaneously called out for its body because it still wanted to continue fighting. There are also a couple different tales regarding what happened at the end of the 3 months. One was that a poet recorded that he witnessed the head groaning as it turned to the left and then to the right, almost as if it was looking for something. Then, with a heave-ho, it broke away from this stand and flew north, seemingly searching for its body. Another is that it was mocked, or that someone whispered to it Masakado's body's location. Either way, it made a perfectly creepy grin and closed its eyes. That night, it started to glow brightly. It let out an eerie cry and flew off back to the Kanto area. It was a long trip, and the decapitated flying head flew for a while, landed to rest for a bit, then took off again. Eventually, it stopped for good in a fishing village called Shibasaki. Here would grow up to be Edo, and then later still, Tokyo. The locals stumbled across this exhausted, disembodied head, realized who it was, and cleaned it up. They then, realizing that it was probably none too happy about the events surrounding its demise, they gave it a proper burial. This was called the Kubizuka, or head mound. The villagers then built a shrine to the great warrior and honored him as a hero that he was, a rebel for the common person, standing up against greedy, powerful, mean elites. He wasn't perfectly appeased, though. Some reported seeing his ghost wandering around the streets near the shrine. For the most part, you didn't hear about him for some time, but every so often, every so 100 years, whenever the shrine was neglected or forgotten, bad things happened, like natural disasters. When it was properly honored, everything calmed down again. For example, in the 14th century, a great plague struck the city of Edo, and it was blamed on Masakado's still simmering rage. A better monument was built in 1309 to appease the disgruntled spirit, and that curse lifted for a while. In 1923, the Great Kanto earthquake struck. The Ministry of Finance building, which was located near Kubizuka, collapsed. They tried to relocate the head mound during the reconstruction so they could use that space to build another building. But people, specifically leaders and executives of both the construction company and the Ministry of Finance, started dropping dead. 14 people ended up dying before someone figured out it was the curse of Masakado's head. They nixed constructing a new building on the site and instead built a stone monument to Taira no Masakado in 1927. This great samurai wasn't finished being angry, though. In 1940, that new Ministry of Finance building was struck by lightning and burned to the ground. Cue more groveling, ceremonies, and another monument built for Masakado. After the end of World War II, Americans marched right in and decided they wanted to make a parking lot there. Nope. Masakado's spirit flips over the bulldozer, kills the driver, and that project was quickly put to a halt. These days, it is well kept and prayed to regularly. Okay, a couple tidbits before I let you go. When Taira no Masakado was preparing for one of his rebellions, a huge swarm of butterflies appeared in Kyoto. It was thought to be a sign of what was going to come. Unfortunately, you don't really find that Masakado is associated with butterflies. Frogs, yes, but I'll get to that in a minute. From the original legend, there have grown other tales about Masakado. In one story, Tawara Toda Monogatari, He's described as being almost superhuman. He had such mysterious power that he was able to create 6 identical copies of himself. This way, while on the battlefield, there would be 7 Taira no Masakados running around, chopping people up. Since no one knew which was the real one, he was impossible to defeat. Here it was said that he only had a single weak point, right below his ear. A concubine revealed to Fujiwara no Hidesato the trick to find the real Masakado was to look at the shadows. All the copies didn't have one. Fujiwara was then easily able to locate the real warrior, shoot him under the ear with an arrow, and killed him on the spot. There's also a festival for him, the Masakado Matsuri, held every year in November in Bando City, Ibaragi Prefecture. And finally, frogs. If you ever visit the Kubizuka spot, not far from the Emperor's Palace or Tokyo Station, there are a set of rules that anyone who dares to go must follow. Very simply, no noisy, obnoxious, or disrespectful people should visit. Be quiet, don't litter, don't mess with anything. Pay your respects quietly, then leave. But while you're there, you might get a little confused because you'll find a lot of frog statues. There's a reason. Remember his severed head sort of hopped its way home, stopping to rest along the way, like a frog. Also, the word for frog is kairu. Kairu, also with different kanji, means to return, to go back, or to go home. Not just here, but you'll find frogs that are a symbol of returning somewhere safely. You'll find small froggy charms sold all over Japan, and people carry them for just this reason. It could be to return somewhere safely, or if you lost something, for it to come back to you safely. If you're having some bad health, the frog can represent good health returning. My mother-in-law gave me one ages ago and told me to keep it in my wallet. Its magic power was to return any money I had spent back to me. Lost that frog. Anyway, so there you go. The first samurai of Japan. Powerful symbol of resistance and bravery. And when double-crossed, some epic curses. Thank you all for listening. I will talk to you again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.